like to welcome you all today to our webinar, FSP 2.0, Why Talent Development is the New Talent Acquisition. My name is Heather Berger, and I'm the Brand Marketing Manager here at Parexel, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Our speakers today have both dedicated their professional careers to clinical research. First, Jamie Langley is the Global Head of Parexel Academy. She's an experienced education leader with passion for continuous learning at the employee, patient, and client levels. In her role as Global Head of Parexel Academy, Jamie leverages her passion for learning, operations expertise, and advocacy for more equitable access to clinical trials. Berger is the Vice President of Commercial and Operational Strategy at Parexel FSP. He has over 20 years of experience across clinical operations, project leadership, marketing, and commercial remits. In his role, Neil brings a unique perspective on outsourcing models to support the changing clinical development needs of our clients. Jamie and Neil, welcome. Today's discussion is intended to be informal. There are no slides, and we have allowed plenty of time for questions. You may submit a question either during the presentation or at the end by using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. There's a lot to talk about today, so let's get started. One of our biggest issues that the biopharmaceutical industry is facing today, and really has for some time, is the shortage of experienced talent. More people are retiring or changing careers, and in large part due to COVID, but at the same time, job requirements are also changing, requiring employees to have expanded skills and knowledge. Jamie and Neil, can you talk to us about how the industry is adapting to the talent shortage? Jamie, I'll ask you to go first if you don't mind.
All right, thanks, Heather. So we are absolutely in the midst of a talent crisis, and thought leaders in this space like Korn Ferry have been projecting this to peak in around 2030. What we know, though, is that the talent challenge is not new to clinical research industry, but we are in the market for highly skilled workers, and we're seeing increased competition now as the demand is really exceeding the pool of available candidates that are out there. So we've got to think differently about how we're approaching finding new talent in terms of both acquisition and development. Benefiting the organization is, far beyond a financial origin. We have to really think about how we can increase retention, retain organizational knowledge, cultivate an engaged and loyal workforce, at the same time as fostering retention and providing opportunities for our colleagues to grow and develop through these talent development endeavors. Neil?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Honestly, what we're seeing now is we're going through a talent crisis. There's a shortage of talented labor, but this is something that is also being compounded by the fact that we've been pushing for 20 plus years on an innovation imperative where we've actually been actively looking at new technologies, new skill sets, new geographies as opportunities open in the clinical development and clinical research worlds. And those factors together with a traditional shortage in our labor pools is really compounding the problem, and it's forcing us to no longer look at sort of an additive, throw a little bit more money at the problem solution, but really a paradigm shift in how we define sustainability of the labor market. And I think that's where, the development construct is one of the most important components of that new reality. That's really where we see this happening right now.
So can you, those are both some great points that you made. Can you think of examples on how to develop the talent through, upskilling and reskilling? And how does that impact talent acquisition?
Neil, do you want
to? Sure. I say that one of the big things that's happening now is that the reliance on the market to develop talent has always been there, right? We've always relied on the natural progression of whether it's education systems or other industry to develop talent. And there will be a healthy amount of movement and attrition as people evolve in their careers. And what's happened now is that there's been recognition well beyond just the pharma industry, but if you look at some of the other industries that have adopted innovation a little bit more quickly, like technology, they realized well before COVID that the market is not able to, on its own, develop talent. And they've been investing significantly in creating their own development mechanisms that, in addition to providing the talent they need, it also is creating loyalty and cost favorable economics by doing so, in affiliation with their own organizations instead of just the public domain. So I think that there's something that the pharma industry right now is starting to recognize is there's some other industries doing a much better job than we were. Jamie?
Yeah, I think to that point, Neil, when you look even into government and military, right, they map job roles and competencies, and they build out these career lattices, right? And I think one thing that we have to get better at in our industry is understanding that talent development is core to our talent strategy. We're not going to be able to find everything that we need from the market. We're going to have to understand what roles have easy transitions with specific upskilling or reskilling. So building out these competency maps, these career or talent journeys is going to be really essential for us making this work. There are a lot of roles within our business, CRAs or clinical research associates, data analysts, biostatisticians, project managers, and there's core content or core knowledge that they all share. So we should be able to pinpoint those opportunities to develop them across job families and identify the skills that are going to be most effective tomorrow.
It's quite interesting because one of the aspects is we're speaking of career development a lot, right? And we have all, as organizations, really done a fantastic job internally. And I think one of the gaps that exists is if we're looking at an outsourcing model where big pharma may internally have fantastic career development for their own internal staff, there's a gap that inherently exists when they're using an outsourcing model. And they're relying on various CRO partners to develop those staff, but that becomes very siloed and very fragmented, both with walls between the partner and the pharma company, as well as walls across various different partners. And looking at ways to actually internalize as the pharma company, they need to maintain a priority of developing their talent, because one of the things we're also seeing in the next generation is an important priority for them is education and developing the talent and creating an employee value proposition. We as an organization have an incredibly strong culture internally. And what we need to do as an outsourcing partner is we need to support the pharma companies in ensuring that the talent we provide to them is inherently embedded in their employee value proposition. And that's where the development construct becomes more important.
Absolutely. I think part of that is too, Neil, is generation. We know that the folks that are our age, right, more mature in the workforce, we grew up thinking about working for a company, right? And when I think about my kids who are now entering the workforce, and they're looking to work with a company, right? They want to know what's that reciprocity with that company. So that employee value proposition is huge. How do we make that more attractive to newcomers to our industry, to let them know and let them see the opportunities for where we are investing as an organization in their professional development, not just in their job development within the organization?
Yeah, let's talk about an interesting detail. Like, we've worked together within Parexel. Your academy program is a phenomenal foundational part of our own internal tool set. But one of the things that we're finding now more and more is that it's actually a very close partnership with our other pharma companies that we work with in order to create an extension of themselves through the academy, right? It's no longer, hey, Parexel, you develop the talent, but they want to be a part of that journey because there's a indisputable value proposition for them. And we very often do that as we're branding our training models for the client. And there's so many key advantages to that, right? whether it's learning a client system and technology, learning an approach to developing people with those early innate skills and culture that they want to be a part of their organization. There's some interesting examples where we have ongoing partnerships right now that are.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the ones that really sticks out here is around that upskilling. Okay, so we have a particular client that we're working with, and we're taking individuals who are experienced clinical research associates. So they've got monitoring under their belt, they've got several years of experience, but we want to expand them into a particular therapeutic area, such as oncology. So how do we build a program that's customized or tailored to that specific client, program, their development pipeline, and make sure that these folks who have the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of being a CRA, are able to then apply that within that therapeutic area. And it's actually been really successful. It's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, it's absolutely no longer looking for that perfect talent that checks all the boxes. What it is really looking at boxes that we could develop in order to make the access to talent in such a tight market right now. You need to, without compromising quality, you need to open up the tap a little bit more and look at where we could really find the right talent and develop them, whether it's therapeutically, technology-based, or whatever it may be. And there's some interesting programs where there's investments with some programs where we're even taking talent from Japan, and they're being relocated to the US for 6 months to a year to gain oncology experience and then going back. And this is a sponsor-led program that it doesn't get as more in-depth than that.
No, I think it certainly has become much more collaborative in terms of the development. And there are clients that we're working with to build out competency frameworks for their organization, leveraging our best practices and our involvement with industry thought leaders on the core competencies for roles within the industry. So I think we're all kind of recognizing industry-wide that we've got to think differently. We've got to be a bit more creative than we have been in the past.
So you talked a bit about, some of the examples that you've done to develop talent, where, especially in areas where it doesn't exist. Can you give us a few more examples, or how do you address that with clients, when you're trying to fill these gaps?
So that's a meaty question, right? So let me speak just briefly about the academy in terms of what it is and what it isn't. So we are not Parexel's learning function, all right? So when a client comes to Parexel and they're looking for that extension, that talent development component to be integrated within their system, and very specifically within our FSP model, integrating that support, that's with Parexel's Academy, not Parexel's Learning and Development. What that does is it opens up the door to content, to programming that is tested within universities across multiple clients, that really we've got metrics to support what's been done, how well it's worked, what the learner uptake and performance has looked like. We have a success in building completely naive individuals into high-performing CRAs. We have experience taking CRAs and moving them into a clinical trial manager or project manager, function manager type role. So these are things that we can offer out to our clients and help them create their own adjunct or supportive talent development model.
Yeah, and they are competitive, right? We have some programs where we're doing enrollment a full 12 months in advance. And this is because there's the demand out there. It's a competitive opportunity to participate in some of our academy and other training programs where we're taking new recent graduates. And more interestingly, something that Jamie, you and I have talked a lot about with the change and the great resignation, a lot of people are actually looking at new careers. the pharma industry is talked about around dinner tables like it has never been talked about in before. We used to be the ones that no one wanted to talk to, and now it's amazing to hear that people are fascinated and are making moves into careers with related skill sets, but they still need training. And I don't know, do you find that there's an incredible increase in the amount of cross-training that's happening as opposed to new graduates coming through?
Absolutely. I think we've even seen success taking IT project managers and moving them into clinical trials project managers, because that core knowledge, right, is there. They just need to understand how to apply that within the context of a clinical trial. One of the biggest pieces that we see is a natural progression, right? Moving from a research coordinator, study nurse, right, to a CRA, but also looking at how to move into other roles, like being a data analyst or going back to school and moving into even a commercial capacity. So Neil, you're going to have to watch out. You're going to have quite a few of these folks coming your way.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited, and I think that it's interesting. Our industry has, it's highly regulated. It's always been a little bit slow to adapt to change because that's the nature of what we are. And I think that it's exciting to see this being accelerated in such a positive way. We really are finding that those partners that we have on the pharma side that are adapting and really embracing this paradigm shift towards development are creating this unique culture, and it's easier to attract talent. I can say that, working directly with our recruiting and our talent acquisition group within FSP in my remit, one of the biggest strengths is they're asking right away during early interviews about the talent development that they're going to be offered and what their career development is, sometimes before the salary, right? And it's really becoming important. And those pharma companies that have partnerships with us on the development side are more attractive. We're finding it easier to fill these roles.
Absolutely. When you think about the CRAs in particular, right? Because they've historically always been hot. They're even hotter today, right? We can offer them the bigger sign-on bonus, the bigger salary, right? What's going to differentiate us is exactly what you just described. It's how are we investing in them differently? How are we helping them to become more marketable, more astute in their careers? And that development component is absolutely huge right now.
So now, I'm going to ask you a confrontational question. In fact,
oh boy.
Yeah, I know. This is a little bit of fun.
I might be having internet difficulties.
I'm sure you are, because I've definitely put you on the spot with clients on this one before, because there is a partial truthism out there. There's a perception that you invest all this in developing talent and then they just pick up and leave and go somewhere else. But you and I have always talked about this. There's actually this loyalty that you get.
Absolutely.
This being part of this alumni, this alma mater, that they feel attracted to stay. And I think that that's something that we need to do a better job communicating, the reality of loyalty from training and development, the value that has.
Absolutely. And I think it's twofold, right? So I love this confrontational question. This one doesn't make me want to have internet troubles at all. You're spot on. When you invest in someone who has been trying to break into this industry, it is not easy to get in, right? We'll hire you if you've got experience, but how do you get the experience, right? You do build that sense of loyalty. I think one mistake that companies will often make is we don't continue to invest. We don't continue to develop. So it's sort of like that loyalty will wane at some point. But if we continue to develop them and upskill them and reskill them and value them as individuals, as partners in the work that we're doing, that loyalty will just continue to grow. And you won't be swayed by that, random recruiter that calls and offers you X% more, because you might not get that same investment in your future, your career.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that another interesting thing in addition to that, the loyalty on that side is that when pharma companies are choosing to outsource and work with a partner such as Parexel, there's always this desire to maintain the unique culture of pharma company X within their workforce and have continuity that an internal CRA shouldn't be very different than an outsourced CRA. And I think that the development construct is also incredible at doing that, right? For many years, it's been a little bit easier, but today we really need to invest in doing that. And we can even integrate a continuous and a harmonious training and development program with the pharma company's own development so that there's no gap across them.
Exactly. And I think we've even talked about, you know, a few clients in particular that have multiple CRO partners. And they want to leverage an academy program to provide that development or upskilling for those teams. But their concern is, well, how do we do this across multiple partners? And we can, right? We can bring them together in an integrated team approach and support them.
One of the things you both talked about is, you know, people are, or maybe more junior people coming in and they're thinking about their career paths, right, from the get-go. How can you talk a little bit about, for those that maybe aren't thinking that way or are stuck in maybe a different mindset, how do you get them, and even employers, you know, to be thinking about career paths differently? You know, can you give us some examples, maybe roles or skills where you've been able to, you know, have some success in you know, getting them to think differently?
Sure. So I think it's very common to think, you know, you can go from being a nurse to a study nurse to a CRA to a functional leader to a project manager or a people manager, right? You've got those, you know, very traditional linear progressions. But what about the individual that is starting as a clinical data analyst, okay? And then they want to become a CRA so that they can become a clinical supplies and logistics project manager, okay? And I think the fact that we can build out the competencies for each of those roles, and we can align what are those common or those core competencies between those, and find the gaps and the opportunities to enhance skills, to provide new skills, we can help support those journeys. We often hear, and a lot with the research naive crew, so our university students new to the career pipeline, saying, I've only ever worked at Starbucks, or I've only ever worked in retail. And when you're having that conversation with them and you're coaching them, you're helping them to draw the conclusions between the skills, the customer service skills, the problem solving skills, and how that can translate to the role of a clinical data analyst, the role of a project specialist, the role of a CRA.
Thanks. This has been a great discussion so far. We do have questions coming in, which we'll get to shortly. But, you know, before we do, can you give me your predictions, like both your viewpoints on where's the future headed with regards to talent development? What do you see over the next few years?
Oh boy, Neil?
Well, my crystal ball is working just fine. I think that one of the interesting things is we're trying to find out that new balance where it really is going to sit, because talent development is playing a different role than it used to, and we're all really adapting, coming up. It's, you know, a cliche, but it's the new reality, and we're trying to figure out really what that looks like in a post-COVID world where we are going to maintain a lot of this innovation and acceleration that has become a part of our day-to-day in the industry. And I think that we're all trying to figure out this new work-life balance. We're going to be looking a lot, I would say, at geographic expansion in terms of what markets we're going to be looking for talent. And I think that the role of development is going to be key, because we're no longer going to be able to wait for a market to be prime and ready and perfect, so to speak, but we're going to look at markets and evaluate them based on potential, not current availability of talent. So long-winded answer is that I think we're shifting towards looking at evaluating potential instead of actual availability of talent. And that's where the role of a training program and academy is becoming inseparable from the future of that model.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, Neil. I think the only thing I would add is I think we're going to see tighter collaboration, tighter or more close-knit ties with universities, where we can pull from those university programs into internships and provide both that practical hands-on experience for the potential candidate, but also for the employer, right? Is this really what you thought it was? My favorite thing, when the study coordinator used to tell me they wanted to be a CRA, it was oftentimes because they thought it was a very glamorous role, right? And they didn't quite think it through in terms of all of the messy parts that kind of went along with it. So I think those closer ties, building on a more practical element to the academic education, that's going to be something we're going to have to see in the future.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that academic collaboration is now becoming very much a tri-party type investment with CRO partners, pharma, and academia. So there was very many dual party investments, right, where we would partner early with universities, and certainly pharma has been working very closely with academia for generations, but it's the coming together with a more formalized mechanism in order to introduce the next generation of talent, especially in some of the data sciences. I would say would be an interesting area where that's happening more and more.
Absolutely. That's certainly a growing area, right? So I think, you know, Heather, earlier you asked about, you know, skills and the types of skills that we might be seeing. I think that's a big part of this future piece is the technology, the data analytics component. How do you become more thoughtful about how you can use data to answer specific questions, right? And I think the other piece is we're all a little bit out of practice over the last 2.5 years with our people skills. So we're definitely going to need to see a resurgence of these interpersonal skills, the soft skills that we've always heard about.
Great, thank you. Thank you both of you for your insights. We do have some questions that have come through, so I will start asking some of those. And just a friendly reminder to our audience, you can still submit a question via the Q&A button on your screen. So this first question, it will probably make you laugh. It's one we've all heard before. And it's yes, training and development is important, but how does it solve my immediate resource needs? This approach is not going to get me 10 CRAs in Houston next week.
Well, it definitely is not a panacea, but it does help. I say that the longer we delay talking about the mid and longer term solutions, the longer it's going to take for it to be effective. Because you're right, it won't help with the 10 CRAs tomorrow, but it could get you the 10 CRAs in 6 months from now. And in reality, an interesting thing to think about it is that we certainly have urgent last minute needs for various reasons, but for the most part, we should be able to, as pharma, look into our crystal balls a little bit when we're starting to plan on the drug development and when we're planning to have FPI for some of these studies. And the key is we need to make decisions and commitments at that time. So it's a little bit of a change in the mindset on when we're going to start making commitments and forecasts for that labor, because training could work. Because in reality, a trial, yes, we've done some incredible work in the last 2 years getting trials from protocol to first patient in a matter of days. But in reality, it's typically many months before we need that labor. And as long as we're communicating these pipelines, it actually could be getting you those 10 CRAs in Houston when you need them.
That's right. We just have to get ahead of the curve, right? Yeah. And if we're being thoughtful and we're planning in line with our pharma, counterparts, the the need that's going to inevitably come, then we can definitely be prepared. But as Neil said, this isn't going to be a one-stop shop where you turn on a training program and bam, within 15 minutes, you've got the resources to put on the plane.
Well, it's a perfect segue to our next question, which is how long does it typically take for training and development to pay off and really contribute to the resource pool?
Got it. So this is always a fun one, right? It is a multi-year payoff. And I think Neil and I have, spent some quality time together looking at the numbers and thinking about the cost of development and the financial return on investment, if you will. There are some elements of that return that are not going to be easily measured because that builds into the loyalty and the retention component, right? But what we have seen is that typically within that first year, you've recouped your investment. And by that second, third year, you're continuing to kind of get a return on what you have put into that individual, simply because the market is just so volatile right now in terms of sign-ons, in terms of salaries, and you're able to develop someone in a much more cost-effective manner and develop them with the right habits instead of inheriting maybe habits from 10 other companies that they've worked for or with in the past.
Jamie, I believe you alluded to this earlier, but why is the infrastructure so often a roadblock?
Oh my goodness. Anyone who's ever had children, okay, can probably assume the analogy that if you're not watching the children as they're playing in the backyard, something will catch on fire, right? The need to have dedicated, capable, experienced line managers in place to support, to nurture, to coach any new individual is absolutely critical. They need to have a safe environment where they can grow their skills, they can become more confident in their capabilities, but that they're also able to get that feedback as they're doing the real work. When we think about the more mature individuals that are doing reskilling or upskilling, they need to have role models. Are there peer mentoring programs that are in place, stood up and ready to support those individuals as they transition maybe between job families? And I know, Neil, you've got experience with both of these. So
yeah, the kids and with the retraining, absolutely. I think that it's the collaborative aspect too. A lot of the success in a good training and development program also means that slightly changing even your job descriptions and creating a associate role and looking at what type of tasks could be assigned to those roles in a mentorship type construct. So it's a little bit of a mind shift change within the organizations that are going to leverage a development structure, right? So I think that's part of the roadblock as well, is that they really, and it's not insurmountable. And here's the amazing thing is I going through a partnership development right now, which is exactly like this. The organization has been relying on senior CRAs for the vast majority of their work. Very, very highly qualified staff that are sometimes doing tasks that are much better training the next generation, giving them an opportunity. And we're going through a model with them to actually redivide up all these tasks from senior CRAs to 4 or 5 different roles that are going to be coming even direct from university and being used as associates for training, as well as other geographies, moving things remote instead of all face-to-face. So it's really all a part of the changing their entire landscape and the roles and job descriptions. So it's not just training and development. All of us are going through and re-looking at our job descriptions and the technology and the geographies of our staff. This is one piece of that, critical piece of that change.
Our next question, it says, outside of creating pipelines from colleges and universities, do you feel academy programs are beneficial for other populations, such as veterans, returning caregivers?
Absolutely. So we've actually looked at veteran programs, and as I alluded to earlier, the military has an amazing lattice framework for the skills and capabilities. So how do we take medics and translate those skills over, or take people who have been doing similar project or programmatic management capacities and then provide them with opportunities to grow into the clinical research industry. So definitely with the veteran population, it's something that we've explored and absolutely can make that transition successful. For individuals re-entering, or caregivers, allied health professionals, I'm assuming is where you're going with that, as opposed to individuals who have maybe been caring for an elderly parent, family member, et cetera, at home. But the allied health transition is actually quite easy. A lot of the stuff, if you will, very, very technical term there, that we do in the world of clinical trials is around documentation, okay? And allied healthcare professionals definitely get the importance of accurate, clear, concise documentation. So there's certainly those transferable and translatable skills that we can support and sort of envelop with the world of clinical trials.
What percentage of staff in academy programs are entry level versus mid-career?
Oh, goodness. So in terms of our academy programs, we literally do so many different types of programs. It is challenging to give you a specific number. What I can say is that we have about 20 to 30% of our programs are geared towards research naive individuals, whether that is industry professionals, okay, so we're building up CRAs, project managers, et cetera, or we're even building up site staff, taking a research naive position and providing them with the tools and capabilities that they need to be investigators on a clinical trial. A lot of our programs are also looking at academic endeavors, so MBA programs, Masters in Science programs, partnerships that we have with collaborating universities.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then this next question is, how have training and development expectations evolved from the employee side?
Oh, goodness. Man, I'm getting all the fun questions, Neil. I'm telling you.
I'll help you out on that.
Give me an employee perspective.
I'll tell you, one of the interesting things is that, forget age, you talked about us before being the senior people, and here I'll take that with a grain of salt. I think that developing an independent development plan, IDPs, were something that we should have always been doing, and now I can tell you that it is always being done. A matter of fact, we have our own internal target that 100% of all staff are to have a formal and structured IDP in place. And this is being done, number one, because it's the right thing to do, and number two, because employees want it. They really want to be a part of this journey and to have a little bit more of a forward-looking perspective. So I think that that's really where it all comes to play, and programs like the Academy program are inherently a part of that, right? Because we feed information back to Jamie's organization in terms of what direction some staff are looking to go. If there's a large number of data scientists that are looking to be CRAs, or vice versa, it's really important. And then she's there as an invaluable resource, their organization, to help be a part of the IDP of staff. So I think that would be the most relevant example. I'd say the next generation is demanding to know where their careers are going. It's no longer a discussion that you have at an exit interview. It really is not.
Right. I think on that specific point, Neil, you hit the nail on the head. When we talk to other companies and they look at their exit interview data, or they look at their employee surveys, one of the biggest things that continuously pops up is that employees don't feel that they have development opportunities, or that they're not visible to them. They don't know where to go to find what those opportunities or whatnot are. I think my generation and Neil's generation, we like options, okay? We certainly have been spoiled over the course of the pandemic with our online ordering through DoorDash or any of those similar apps where you can customize any part of your order, right? I think that's where those career maps, those competency maps, career journeys really come into play, because it provides visibility to those employees, right? They want to know, where are they and where can they go? What's that map look like? How do I get there? And then giving them the options to fill in the blanks, fill in the gaps that they have.
Yeah, I agree. There's an expectation with junior staff coming in. I find very much that they want us to help them fill in those blanks, right? They'll come in, they'll be missing that oncology experience. They really are waiting for us to formally help provide those additional tools and education for them. And it's really becoming an expectation of the next generation. And if we're not doing it, someone else is.
Absolutely.
And that's really a lot of what the problem is. If anyone is not going to pick up and do it, they're at a major competitive disadvantage at this point in the market.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry, Heather.
No problem. Nope, that was an important point. So well said. Thank you. But I think that reaches the end of our Q&A in our time today. And I'd like to thank you, Jamie and Neil, for sharing such great insights on what's really a pretty pervasive industry-wide challenge. So thank you. And to our audience, thank you for joining us today. If you do have any additional questions that you didn't have a chance to ask, Jamie and Neil's email addresses will be popping up in the screen momentarily, and please feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to follow up with any questions offline. So thank you all, and I wish you a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.